There's nothing like league. And this is the Betfred Super League. No! Got me here. It took a big chunk out of me. Bleeding. It's bleeding. Oh no, it's bleeding. The thing just ripped my ear off. What do you think?
Hello again, everyone. Yes, it's another Eddie and Stevo, the podcast, talking all things rugby league. Courtesy once again, and thanks to our great friends at Betfred. Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we were last with you, so as always, plenty to get our teeth into. A grand final's been won, and a test series has now started. So let's get straight underway. Stevo, your grand final impressions first of all. Wigan against the Catalan Dragons. Wigan winning 10-2. Worthy winners, do you think?
Just about, Eddie. I thought Catalan, well, too many infringements, too many missed tackles, and Wigan just had that little bit more effort rather than skill factor. It wasn't the best game I've ever seen, nor was it the best grand final I've ever seen. Remember, we touched on it a couple of weeks ago in regards to the officials allowing the third and fourth tackle to come in over the top, and it just slows the game down. And when you think about a half-time, what was it, 2-2 at half-time? We've got to get the officials and the coaches in one room and just say, look, you've been doing this too much. You're spoiling our game. And that's how it was. It shouldn't have been a real tussle. It should have been an exceptional game, a grand final. And sadly, we didn't get it.
Well, some people, the purists, whatever that means, the purists amongst us, will say 2 apiece at half-time, 10-2 at full-time, a fantastic game, a close-run thing. I'm with you. It wasn't fast-flowing. It wasn't like some of the great ones that we've seen in the past. But it was a grand final. It was all to play for, and neither side wanted to lose. Simple.
Yeah, well, you could call it simple, Eddie, and fair play to Wigan. You know, Pete, the coach, has done an absolute fantastic job. They've got a lot of youngsters coming through. Of course, they've got the older players to guide them through. And I was pleased for them. And I was pleased because, you know, they're a good side. And perhaps throughout the season, you'd say they fully deserve to win it. But I'm biased. I like to see good, fast, open rugby league football.
I'm with you 100% as far as that is concerned. Liam Moore, the referee, was under fire, of course, in 2021 when the Catalan Dragons were beaten by St. Helens. Bernard Gouache, he said at the time he'd never, ever again let his team play in a Super League final without Australian officials. Well, he got Liam Moore for the second time. 1 or 2 dubious calls, do you think, against the Catalan Dragons? 2 men sin bin, for instance. That took the wind right out of their sails.
Yeah, I think that certainly didn't help them. But I'm just a bit worried about all this sort of situation with the referees. To me, they're not penalising enough. You know, if you're third man in, remember that it used to be called a flop in the olden days.
Yeah, it did.
Well, it's as though the flop has been said, oh, you can get away with it. We mentioned it again in the fact, even in the build-up before the game starts, both teams are practicing a third man flopping on top. We've got to sort this out. You don't get that in Australia. Australia, they get up off the tackle, get back into the 10 metres, and you get a fast, open, flowing game. In the grand final, I couldn't count more than 4 at the most of runs from dummy half because there's so much messing around at the play the ball area. And both teams are getting away with it, and the referees are allowing it. We've got to stop that.
You have, and you're asking for more penalties to make sure that doesn't happen. And that more penalties will lead to more yellow cards. Stevo, we never see a yellow card that I can remember in an NRL grand final. We also see the players playing the ball with the foot. The Aussies seem to have gone back to basics and are playing the game quicker and with more aggression. Yet we never see a yellow card in an NRL grand final. Am I right?
Well, it's very rare, I'll put it this way, because it's not just the players that understand what the officials down under want from each individual team. It's the fact that they get towards the coaches and saying, look, you can be say without a player for 10 minutes, or if it's just continual, I'll send him off. Look, they are playing towards the game. And as you say, they will play the ball with their foot. For some unknown reason, we don't even bother. We just roll it back. It's as though we've turned the circle. Without being too biased, Eddie, compare the grand final at the NRL. There's a mile of difference.
Oh, a million miles. A million miles. You're right. You're right.
All I'm trying to say is that, thankfully, in the future, we're going to look forward to another World Cup, which was cancelled in France. We're also going to look forward to the general tours, the Kangaroos coming over here, and the British Lions going down under and into New Zealand as well. Now, we've got to make sure that we're playing the same sort of game, because if we want to try to just stop and flop, which is what we're doing now, the Aussies and the New Zealanders will just take us apart.
Yeah, they will. They will. A lovely postscript, I thought, from the grand final. I don't know whether you heard in the commentary, but Bernard, who, of course, wasn't happy with the refereeing official in 2021, he went on to the Old Trafford field before the game, and apparently he brought with him a little bottle of holy water from Lourdes, and he sprinkled it across the Old Trafford pitch. He hoped that would do the trick. He got very close. It nearly happened, but it didn't. But that's Bernard, isn't it? That's the way he is. What a great bloke.
He's a fantastic fella. And obviously, he's had to keep his mouth shut after the last time that they played in the grand final. Look, they're going to have to really dig deep for next season. They're losing a lot of their players, a lot of quality, a lot of experience, and I think it's around about 9 or 10 players that perhaps will be leaving the club for 2024.
Yeah, it's a big job for Steve McNamara. He has a rebuilding process on his hands. Right. The second big story, of course, came 24 hours after the Betfred Super League Grand Final, and this was the fact that London Broncos, Stevo, and I know this is a club very close to your heart, they are back in Super League with a fantastic win in Toulouse. Well deserved.
Oh, without a doubt. Very nervous times. I was sat next to the owner, David Hughes. He was a bag of nerves. The first 40 minutes was probably the worst display in the latter part of the season from the Broncos. I thought it was well and truly over. Toulouse looked as though they were in full control, but I can remember just thinking to myself, well, they can't play that bad in the second half. And they didn't. They came back and they won. It wasn't convincing. It was a tight game. As I say, David was a bag of nerves, but he's glad that he's going to be back in Super League. But here's something that perhaps might shock quite a few people. I don't think David is going to make sure that they are all full-time. There will be some players that will be on a full-time contract, but a lot of younger players will not. They'll be able to have a job as well. And you know something? I think this is the way for the future. Remember, we are not getting the same revenue into each individual club because the sponsorships and, of course, Sky TV are not paying the amount of money that perhaps we expected. So it's going to be difficult times. A lot of clubs, they're going to have to start thinking, maybe we will have to do the same thing as what David Hughes, the man who owns the London Broncos may have to do.
Yes, I'd heard this rumour that David might be looking at a hybrid Super League team with some part-time players and some others full-time. Can they survive with that, Stevo, with that sort of blueprint for the future?
We'll have to wait and see, Eddie. A lot of people will say, no, they can't survive. But you look at the finances of a lot of the clubs in Super League already, and they're shaking in the boots. They know it's going to be difficult.
Well, they're £300,000 per club down over the next 3 years, according to the reports. Sky TV's money is now being quoted at 21.5 million, which is quite a drop. And Sky still planning on televising all 6 games per week on the Sky platform. A possibility of a rugby league pay-per-view channel, we don't know. We're still waiting for the exact details. Any free-to-air coverage, of course, is still there to be discussed. Channel 4, Channel 5, BBC. But will any of them, Stevo, will any of them pay for the privilege of screening matches from the Super League? It looks doubtful to me.
I have to agree to a certain point. And of course, we've got to point the finger at IMG. Now, they're coming in to make sure that we do get more finance. They're coming in to ensure that we get the game of rugby league back up to, shall we say, top of the class in all sports. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to maybe just hang in there. The only one thing that I find positive, that every single weekend, every game will be shown somewhere on TV. Now, that means that perhaps sponsorship may improve. If you realise that every single game is going to be on television, then you could have the opportunity, or should have the opportunity, to ensure that they pay extra for sponsorship.
This is coverage a club level. This is a club level, yeah?
Yeah, coverage on the shirt, on the shorts,
yeah,
even on the socks. It'll give them the ability. But will that mean that with every game being on televised, does that mean that people will say, well, it's raining outside, I think I'll just pay whatever they're going to ask for and watch it on TV and not go to the game?
Well, that's the great debate. That's the great debate.
It's a 50-50, isn't it?
It is indeed. It is indeed. Interesting you mention IMG. The eagerly anticipated preliminary, that's the big word, preliminary IMG ratings are now out in the public domain. This development is going to have far-reaching implications for Super League, Championship and League One teams, as they will receive and have got their initial gradings now and scores across various performance areas. But what makes this intriguing is a year-long window now opens up, and it's providing teams to make the necessary improvements, preparing them for the upcoming promotion and relegation grading system. Now, something that's hit me smack in the face is that they're saying that the essence of this system is that in around 12 months' time, a team's fate could hang in the balance. For instance, a team finishing third in Super League next year might find itself relegated to the Championship if it fails to meet the criteria of what defines a top-flight team. What on earth is all that about, Stevo? If someone finishes third, you can't relegate them to the Championship, can you?
I think they're trying to use a word called flexibility. And I think IMG, whatever they've proposed and whatever documentation they put forward, I think that they're going to have to be quite flexible in regards to that. There's no way in the world that the fans or the clubs or the players, in fact, will look forward to saying, well, we've worked all year, all through the season, finishing third or fourth or whatever, and yet find themselves relegated. Now, relegation is supposed to have finished. So maybe it's, shall we say, they will be just delegated to go to a lower level. And talking of lower levels, we seem to be losing quite a few teams. Does that mean that instead of having 3 competitions that we have now, is it going to be merged, the Championship, into Division 1?
Well, this is looking like it's going to be the most difficult question that has to be answered for next year. League One now down to just 8 clubs. We've talked about this a bit in the recent past. Should the lower divisions merge into one competition below Super League? But I wonder if all this is at the basis of what IMG are thinking about. A team that misses out on-field promotion could secure a coveted spot in the top tier if their off-field operations meet the highest standards. Questions are going to be asked. Not every club will be content with this. What defines a top-flight team, Stevo? To me, it's if you're winning on the field, you're a top-flight team. Full stop. Okay, your backroom staff can be brilliant. Your media, your social media can be brilliant. But if you're not playing any good on the field, people ain't going to come and watch you, for goodness sake.
Perhaps that's the reason why Wakefield have found themselves a new owner, because he realizes that if he does improve in all those situations that are put down on paper from IMG, then they can't fail to stop Wakefield coming back into the top level.
You're right. Yeah,
Because
and the new owner's already taken a significant step. He's shoved Darryl Powell in as the new head coach. And Darryl has already said that is his number one aim for 2024, to get Wakefield back where he thinks they belong. And this could be the way forward for them, for clubs like Wakefield, for clubs like Featherstone, for clubs like Toulouse, the ones who've missed out this year.
Well, of course, it gives them the opportunity. Toulouse is one of the clubs that perhaps they've got a great stadium, they've got great backing, they've got good sponsors. So therefore, they'll be feeling a little bit down, obviously. They only lost one game playing at home, and that was against the Broncos in the final.
There you go.
So it gives you some indication that they're getting it right. Now, what they're trying to do, and we keep saying it, they're trying to copy what has happened in Australia. Now, in Australia, they've never had relegation. So that gives the club time to build. And within the situation where West Tigers and St. George, they're slowly but surely trying to get themselves back up with the big boys. But at least they're given the opportunity. But that is clear cut. They know it doesn't matter whether they finish with a wooden spoon. They're not going to be kicked out.
Yeah, it's going to be slightly different here. There is no doubt about that. And they're saying this is precisely why IMG has been entrusted with this task. Their expertise, they say, will ensure that the grading process is transparent, clear guidelines that leave no room for ambiguity, really. Ultimately, the responsibility to rise to the occasion lies with each rugby league organisation. The IMG ratings will serve as a catalyst for improvement, heralding a new era where not just on-field performance is the key.
I love that. That's the key factor. The key factor. Look, there's always room for change. I can remember many, many years ago, they brought in another company many, many years ago and said, we will change the outlook of rugby league. Don't worry, we'll do what we can do, this, and the other. And you know the first thing that they came up with? They said, you've got to get rid of Eddie Waring. He's just not the right person to commentate on the BBC. And within a fortnight, they got rid of the company that was supposed to be leading them away.
And Eddie Waring stayed for life, just about.
Well, yeah. And I mean, in those days, he was Mr. Rugby League.
Of course he was.
And,
of course he was.
And I can always remember this company that sort of said, what's this all about? You know, I mean, it was well before we knew all about sponsorship and all that sort of stuff. And they said, BBC, give us coverage of our game. And BBC is Eddie Waring.
Correct. Eddie Waring was Mr. Rugby League, bob on, absolutely spot on.
So
they weren't getting shut of him. No.
Well, I tell you what, Eddie, if you and I were still broadcasting, maybe IMG will be saying to everybody, we've got to get rid of that Eddie and Stevo.
Yeah. They were saying that for years before we left.
Yeah, I know. But it just gives you the example that there's got to be room for change. Sometimes you just can't stick to the letter and the documentation that this is want them to do. Things have to change.
But we don't like change. We don't like change, Stevo. We do not like change.
But that's what they did in Australia. They said, no, we don't want that. If a club's gone downhill and they're getting beaten every week, we want to give them the opportunity to rebuild. And that's what's occurred in Australia. And when you think about it,
Stevo, that also occurred here when Catalan came in to Super League. They've now won a Challenge Cup. They've been to 2 grand finals. I think, what was it, 2, 3, 4 seasons? They finished bottom of the pile, and they could easily have been cast aside. But they had the chance to build. And look what they've done.
I suppose the main process of IMG is thinking that it'll give them the opportunity to build. It might be 3 years' time or 4 years' time, whereby, say, the likes of Wakefield, new owners, who's going to pump in evidently a lot more cash. They've got Darryl Powell. I think he's on a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
And within 3 years, they'll say, yeah, let us in.
Hey, they might be saying that in 12 months' time. And whoever finishes third in Super League might be on their way out the other way.
You never know, Eddie. The thing is that they will look at the documentation and say, right, let's tick the boxes. And every box has been ticked. So therefore, what are you going to do? There's 3 clubs in Super League where only half the boxes are ticked. What are they going to do then?
It's interesting.
They can't stop Wakefield from coming back in to Super League.
No, that's right. Listen, all that's conjecture, of course, and it's all for the future. What's on at the moment is this historic test series between England and Tonga. Now, first test win for England last weekend against the Tongans. Only just, but some good performances in the England jerseys. Tom Johnston, 2 tries. Mikey Lewis on his debut, a try and a hand in much of what was good about England. If he plays that well again this weekend, Stevo, while George Williams is still on the sideline suspended, will George get back in? Should he? Should he get back in despite being named skipper before the series?
Well, if you're going to nominate him as a captain, then it'll be very rare to find an international situation whereby the captain doesn't play. It has happened in the past. There was a tour captain where the British Lions went down to Australia, and the captain did not play in one of the 3 test series. But it's very, very rare. And look, I mean, George Williams is a tremendous player. Maybe they'll just put Michael Lewis on the bench because he played, he was outstanding.
He was absolutely outstanding.
And it was through his electric pace that made the opportunities to ensure that they got away with a win. And that pass from Wellesby that put Johnston in the corner was probably one of the best passes I've seen in rugby league history. It was dynamic, it was pinpointed, and it was just what they needed at a time where it looked like Tonga was going to start taking control of the game.
Indeed. I mean, Jack Wellesby is dynamic. So too is Mikey Lewis. I loved his post-match interview. Did you? When he got all teary and he teared up when he got the Man of the Match award. You know, it meant so much to him, so much to the lad. The journey he's had and where he is now, it's fantastic. It's a great story.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, any youngster that wants to play the greatest game of all, which, as you know, is rugby league. And to play for your country, you can't beat it. You know, you look at the badge on your jersey before you run out, and you feel the pride. But it's like having a tattoo underneath on your skin, because you can't erase it. It's there. You've made it to the top. And it's something that every young kid who plays rugby league just wants to do, to play for your own country.
I know you think this. You speak about it so passionately because I think I'm right in saying that playing for Great Britain was the greatest accolade you ever had in the sport, wasn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. There's nothing comes anywhere near. You look at that badge, and underneath it, it's like that tattoo.
Yeah.
It never will be removed.
And you were a World Cup winner as well, old boy, weren't you? 1972. You were there and won the World Cup. Good on you. And that's a tattoo as well for you. Well played. Well played. Look, let's get back to Super League briefly. We hinted last time we were on the air that Salford looked as though they were struggling financially. I think the fact that Brodie Croft and Andy Ackers have now left the club for Leeds indicates we were probably spot on. John Wilkin on Sky describes the ongoing issues at Salford as a car crash. He says, with Tyler Dupree joining Wigan earlier this year, it meant that Paul Rowley has lost 3 key men. Wilkin says it's a race to the bottom. Salford, before next season's fixtures are published, despite the great work that Paul Rowley did, they, along probably with Castleford and, I'm sorry to say, Stevo, London, if they do go part-time, full-time, they will be the 3 names on everybody's lips as relegation candidates before a ball's been kicked. But the same was being said about Lee this time last year.
As I say, the finance situation controls rugby league at the moment.
Well, at least with Salford's money, and again, the fee for these 2 players is reported to be £300,000. That gives them the financial stability to at least A, survive, and B, who knows, kick on next year.
Well, it depends on their development at junior level, what's coming through the ranks. Do they have to go elsewhere to fill the spots that they've lost now? Do they have to take a risk and maybe go for an Australian or a New Zealander that perhaps might be at the end of his career rather than the start of his career? And that's a problem that all the clubs face. You know, do we take a gamble on experience, or do we take a gamble on bringing 2 or 3 good youngsters through? It's a difficult job running a rugby league club.
It's incredibly difficult. It really is. Look, just a final thought before we go. And I know, it goes without saying, even though others, Stevo, are jumping on the bandwagon, this is the best rugby league podcast that is around. But let's just give a word.
Hang on. I'll tell you what.
It's an award. It's an award winner in our house.
Oh,
anyway.
Listen, I love it when you become biased. I really do. I think you're going over the top there.
I just want to finish with a word about Sir Kevin Sinfield. And as I say, I know it's rugby league we're talking about, but the England Rugby Union players who missed out so narrowly in the World Cup semi-final on Saturday, and I include Kevin in all of this. Stevo, look, I know nothing about the rules of any game. Rugby league,
I agree.
football,
I agree.
Yeah. But rugby union baffles me from start to finish. Can you tell me, please, what the penalty that South Africa got 3 minutes from full time was given for? I've no idea. It looked harsh. I don't know why it was given. Do you?
Calm down, Eddie. It's called scrum tactics.
Okay.
And if the prop on the blind side goes down first and ends up underneath his opposite prop, for some unknown reason, the referee will give a penalty. In other words, they couldn't keep the scrum tight.
Okay. So that means that an England player collapsed the scrum. Is that what you're telling me? Because it looked like it moved. It looked like it moved from left to right across the field. And the South Africans were pushing and shoving.
That's part of the tactic, Eddie.
Oh, right, okay.
You must understand that that's why I'm concerned about our game becoming a little bit negative in regards to the flop, the third player coming in to stop the quick play of the ball. The rugby union players up front in the pack, they know exactly how the referee is going to handle it. So if you can make the opposition go to ground first, then you might get a penalty.
Gamesmanship. Gamesmanship.
Yes. The rest of the rules, Eddie, I have no idea.
No, but people tell me there's about 120 around the scrum alone. So God help us if we would have a conversation on rugby union. Anyway, poor old Kev. Poor old Sir Kev, but he'll come again, fingers crossed. And hopefully, Stevo, please God, hopefully, one of these days, Kevin Sinfield comes back to rugby league.
Well, I hope so. I think he's doing a damn fine job. It was on display, wasn't it? Is their defensive coach. And to me, England never looked like scoring a try. But for most of the game, it never looked like South Africa was going to score a try. So no. Sinfield was doing a good job on that particular aspect of it. But it's just the genius of the man. It's experience. He's done this, he's done that. But not only that, what a man.
Yeah. What a lovely bloke. What a lovely bloke. And there are plenty of them in rugby league. Plenty of them.
Now, before we go, Eddie, just a little bit about coming out of Australia. Of course, the Melbourne Storm, they are just about to announce a new sponsorship with Fiji Air. And not only is it going to last for a lot of money over 3 years, but they want to take one of the games to Fiji to help secure rugby league on the islands of Fiji. Wow. And I think it's a great step forward. Now, remember, we're going to Las Vegas with 2 games to start the new season. And that is just showing you that we are spreading the wings. And nobody is complaining about it. And before I go, Eddie, I really must have to say, I do hope that Dom Young gets over and gets back to fitness as quickly as possible, because he's joining the Sydney Roosters for next season. He picked up a virus, so he's having to have treatment and rest, but they are now announcing that he will be fully fit for the start of next season. So on behalf of you and I and all the people that listen to our podcast, Dom, let's hope you get back to fitness very, very soon.
Indeed, because he was discounted from the first test and he will not play, I don't think, in this Tongan series, which continues this coming weekend. So let's wish England all the best for that. They go 2-0 up and we can celebrate an international victory. And talking of which, Stevo, next week, take the week off because I'm going to catch up with Lee Breers, who is back in the UK. He is assistant coach to Sean Wayne. I'm going to talk to him about all things connected with him, his time at Brisbane, his first 12 months. And, it should make an interesting little interview. And we've got that for everybody on the podcast this time next week. So have the week off. And then the week after the third test, we'll come back and we'll round up the whole season and the whole year. And I'll be the first to wish you a happy Christmas. How's that?
Sounds pretty good to me, top man.